Hello, hello, hello. It is I, Big J All Day, aka the Mighty Big J. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful Tuesday for another episode of The Hype Show with me, Big J All Day. Episode 7, so I appreciate you joining me. If you are new to this channel, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video and subscribe to this channel. Definitely helps the channel, and I definitely appreciate it very much here. This is episode 7 of the Hype Show, and today we're going to be talking about the results of Week 3. Week 3's games ending last night here with the pair of Monday night games we had. We discussed Thursday Night Football on Sunday, but we're going to discuss all of Sunday's games and, of course, last night's games here to end the show. The first game we're going to talk about here is the Cleveland Browns defeating the Tennessee Titans. They hosted the Titans, and the final score was 27-3. Cleveland winning that game. Looking at the passing here, Deshaun Watson was 27 of 33 for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also was on the ground, 4 carries for 16 yards. So he didn't do much on the ground, but he definitely did a lot through the air. So that was a great game for him. On the flip side here for Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill was 13 of 25 for 104 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a very rough day. Cleveland's defense pretty much devoured him, and they pretty much gave him the worst night of his life, pretty much. I kind of saw the highlights of that. It was not a great day for him. Looking at the football as a whole here, Washington was very efficient through the air. The rushing game was kind of there. Again, with Nick Chubb not being there, they're definitely going to struggle. They brought Kareem Hunt, but he wasn't a factor in the game at all. Their leading carrier was Pierre Strong. He had 6 carries for 27 yards. Around Jerome Ford, he is the guy that starts now in place of Nick Chubb. They're kind of going to go through a 3 to 4 running back rotation. But the guy starting in place of Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, he had 10 carries for 18 yards, and he did have a touchdown. So that was actually a good thing for them. They actually got to go on the ground as far as scoring, but they didn't have quite the yards that they want. On the flip side, Tennessee, they didn't do much either. All-Pro Derrick Henry, he was held to 11 carries for 20 yards. Tajay Spears, 4 carries, 6 yards. They got 26 yards on the ground as a team and just couldn't get it going. That defense was just all over them. It feels like Nick Chubb's injury has like reinvigorated this team in a way, and they're like fighting for him because they didn't get the win because Pittsburgh was able to get the comeback on them. But ever since that moment, they've kind of come with their heads on fire, and they really showed it. They dominated this game all the way throughout. There was only a field goal by Nick Folk in the second quarter for the Titans. Those were the only points they were able to put on the board. DeAndre Hopkins for the Tennessee Titans, he had 3 catches for 48 yards. Chris Moore had 2 catches for 41 yards. He was a running back out of the backfield. That was about the only receiving you can really speak of for Tennessee. And looking at Cleveland, Amari Cooper, he led everybody with 7 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown. Donovan Peoples-Jones had the most catches at 9 catches, but he was only able to get 49 yards. Jerome Ford also had a touchdown catch as well with 2 catches for 33 yards. So he got a touchdown running it and receiving. So that kind of helps. When you look at the box score, you only see that he has 51 yards of total offense, but with him being able to get a touchdown through the air and on the ground, that contribution is definitely going to help. And as far as I'm concerned here, that's really what Cleveland needed, was to kind of show that they still have some sort of spirit, and they came out swinging. This was a huge victory for them. The game was never in doubt at any time. As far as Tennessee, their record now here, they fall to 1-2 on the season. Nothing to speak about running the football or throwing the football. It was just a bad day all around. 130 yards of total offense between passing and throwing and running the ball. That's just awful. Awful, awful. Tennessee this year, they've really gotten off to a rough start. The offense it's just not working this season. Derrick Henry, I really expected him to kind of spell the passing issues that they would have, but he's just not really showing that same oomph that he had last year. Through 3 games, he has 51 carries for 163 yards and just 1 touchdown, and that's only 3.2 yards per carry. Rough. Yeah, that's kinda what I expected for him to be, and it's just not working. And Tannehill, DeAndre Hopkins is not able to shine because Tannehill is not getting the ball to him the way he should be. Statistically speaking, Ryan Tannehill, he's also having a rough season as well. At this current point in time here, Tannehill only has 1 touchdown pass, and he has 3 interceptions. His completion percentage is 52% on the season. That's just over half, and again, that's not gonna get it done. It's really not gonna get it done. That win over the win that they got over the Los Angeles Chargers last week, to me, felt like a gift. It felt like the Chargers didn't play their best ball, and Tennessee was able to capitalize because they were at home, but if the Chargers actually did what they had supposed to do last week, this could be an 0-3 football team we're looking at in Tennessee. It's just not working as far as Tennessee, but we'll have to see what they are. Again, that division is kinda muddled. We'll talk about the other teams and their results later, but looking at the Tennessee Titans' next few games here, week 4, they'll be home against the Cincinnati Bengals, October 1st, 1 PM Eastern on Fox. The following week, they're at the Indianapolis Colts, October 8th, 1 PM Eastern on CBS. They're actually gonna be facing the Baltimore Ravens in an international game on October 15th. That's gonna be 9:30 AM Eastern Time against the Baltimore Ravens. Again, that's going to be played in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in England. So that's considered a home game for them, even though both teams have to travel. They're back home after a bye week. The following week, week 7, they have a bye week. And then week 8, they're back home against the Atlanta Falcons, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. They have a short turnaround right after that for a Thursday night game against the Pittsburgh Steelers at Heinz Field, 8:15 Eastern at Pittsburgh. This Titans team is incredibly inconsistent, and again, I stated that I felt like that game was given to them, that Los Angeles Chargers game. So I'm gonna say that they lose that Cincinnati game. Indianapolis, they improved to 2-1. We'll talk about their game against Baltimore. They really impressed me so far. Gardner Minshew coming in for Anthony Richardson, he balanced everything out. Even though he had kind of an odd safety later in the game, he balanced that offense out because he has enough years in the league to kind of know what to do as far as being on their team, and he's a great backup addition. Anthony Richardson is going to take some time for him. Again, he's only played a couple of games, so if it's a situation where Anthony Richardson is back, and we'll just have to see. But based on the way Tennessee is looking right now, I could see them losing at Indianapolis. I want to see a lot better from that offense. The offense isn't playing very well, and the defense is very meh at this current time. Versus Baltimore over in England, as I mentioned, I can see them losing that game as well. A bye week will do them some good because home against Atlanta, that game is kind of a pick 'em because Atlanta, I don't really know still what they are yet. They've shown me a lot of inconsistency as well, so that's very much a pick 'em. And then at Pittsburgh, I could see them losing that game just due to the simple fact that Pittsburgh's defense has been howling pretty much all year, even with Cam Hayward being out. And at the same time, that crowd is gonna probably get to that team. I could see that being a factor as well, so give me Pittsburgh. We'll get closer to that game and kinda prognosticate it officially, but looking at the next 5 games, as far as I'm concerned, I could see this being a 2-3, 1-4 football team. They just haven't really gotten it going on either side of the ball in a way that I like, and, we'll just have to see if they do anything more to kinda get that team going with the personnel they have. Injuries happen, things happen, players kinda show up out of nowhere. I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns here as far as I'm concerned with them. Let's look at their schedule and see what they can do. But so far, they've been very impressive. With the 2 wins that they've outscored their opponents 51-6. And the loss that they did have at Pittsburgh, I think that had a lot to do with Nick Chubb going down with that injury. I feel like that kind of drained that team and kind of took their spirits a bit because Pittsburgh was only able to beat them by 4. I believe they were leading at that time that injury occurred. So this could easily be a 3-0 football team, and they've shown me a lot. They're home against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, October 1st, 1 PM Eastern. They're also gonna have a bye week, week 5, so they're getting one of those early buys. The following week, October 15th, 1 PM Eastern on Fox, they're home against the 49ers. I'm very curious to see what that defense can do against the Niners offense and see how they bottle up Brock Purdy. I also want to see how they scheme against a lot of those weapons. They have weapons everywhere with the Niners, so that's going to be a very interesting game. At Indianapolis, I just spoke about that. October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern, CBS. I could see them winning that game. October 29th, 4:05 Eastern, October 29th, they're at the Seattle Seahawks. November 5th, 1 p.m. Eastern, that's going to be the game following. They're home against the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals, I'll touch on them also as well. Excuse me. They definitely impressed me this past weekend with what they did to the Cowboys. That was very interesting. They showed me a lot with what they have. So again, it's football is a crazy sport. Injuries happen, upsets happen. Players they kind of show you stuff that you haven't seen before. Just a lot going on. But looking at this next 5 game spread that they got going on, the only game that jumps out to me that could be a definite loss is going to be home against the 49ers because the 49ers travel pretty well and they have a lot of personnel everywhere. Home against Baltimore, I'm gonna take them because Baltimore has a lot of injuries. They have a lot of guys out, and it definitely reared its ugly head against the Colts in part as well. So, looking at this game, at worst, they could be 3-2. Again, we'll get closer to these games and prognosticate them more closely and more in depth, but they could be a 3-2 football team at worst over the next 5 games, in my opinion. So that's a kind of a sneaky thing as far as their schedule. I just don't know anything definitive outside of the 49ers. But yeah, definitely one of those moments where Cleveland is showing they still got some fight in them, and Tennessee they need a lot of help. Very subpar on offense. Moving on to the next game here, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions bouncing back for their Week 2 loss at home. They defeated the Atlanta Falcons 20-6. Quarterback for Detroit, Jared Goff had 22. He was 22 of 32 with 243 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Ritter, he was 21 of 38 for 201 yards. He didn't have any touchdowns or interceptions. Another very plain performance here from the Atlanta Falcons. Detroit definitely showed what they can do in part. They're missing a couple of guys here, but they definitely showed what they can do in part as a football team. Jared Goff was able to throw for touchdowns and run for touchdowns. That was very important here. He, excuse me, he showed that he's very savvy in the pocket when he faked off the handoff, and then he kind of just took off and ran to the end zone. It's one of those things to me where he feels more comfortable in Detroit as opposed to being with the Los Angeles Rams. And he's definitely showing and radiating with his teammates. He has great connections with his receiver and his rookie tight end, Sam Laporta. As far as running the football, the Detroit Lions, Jameer Gibbs, the rookie out of Alabama, he led the rushing aspect with 17 carries for 80 yards. Craig Reynolds came behind him with 4 carries for 15 yards. As a team, they only had 115 yards rushing on the ground, but through the air is kind of where they made a lot of noise. The Atlanta Falcons, conversely, only had 44 yards as a team running the football. Bijan Robinson had 10 carries for 33 yards. So, um, a rough day and whole as a whole for the Atlanta Falcons here because looking at the score, it just doesn't seem like it was a blowout. But when you see how little Detroit did or Atlanta had with the football, what they did with the football, just kind of makes it seem like Detroit didn't really feel the need to do much. On the receiving end here, Amon-Ra St. Brown paced all receivers through the game with 9 catches for 102 yards. He didn't hit the end zone, but he definitely paced the team as far as keeping the clock moving and getting first downs. He was more of a possession receiver for this particular game. Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end out of Iowa, as I stated, he had 8 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. He's definitely looking really good right out of the gate here. He looks like to be a very much a steal for the Detroit Lions. They had a lot of guys that are drafted just in this draft of 2023 that are starting already, and they look good. They hit home runs in this draft here. Jameer Gibbs looks like he's going to be solid for this team. Sam Laporte, as I mentioned, he's a great rookie as far as catching the ball, and he knows his assignments right off the bat. So that's fantastic. On the receiving side for the Atlanta Falcons here, third-year tight end Kyle Pitts out of Florida actually had 5 catches for 41 yards. And the other tight end, Jonnu Smith, they have a pair of tight ends that they typically have in sets at oftentimes here. Jonnu Smith, he had 5 catches for 37 yards. So not much from the receiving core. And Bijan Robinson, who's typically a very versatile back as far as running the football and throwing the football, he was only able to get 60 yards of offense in total as he had 4 catches for 27 yards. They did not find the end zone at all, just 2 field goals here from Younghoe Koo, their kicker. And Detroit, like I said, they did just enough to subdue this team here. Ritter connected with 8 different receivers, but if you're not getting the ball down the field and moving it as you should, then it doesn't really matter. And that was the problem here. As far as the Detroit Lions here, again, they've definitely bounced back from that loss that they took last week against the Seattle Seahawks. And to me, this was the team I was kind of expecting. Again, they didn't put a lot of points on the board, but the way that they played the game is what I expected.
Again, in a few days here, actually, they'll be playing Monday Night Football at Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, September 28th. I'll have a definitive prediction for that game, and we'll also talk more about Green Bay and their result in their game as well. Again, they'll have 10 days between games after this Thursday, the following Sunday for Week 5. That's 1 p.m. Eastern, October 8th, home against the Carolina Panthers. Definitely see them winning that football game. Carolina looked really good this past weekend, but as far as down the road, I still see Detroit taking that. At home against the Tampa Bay, or actually they're at Tampa Bay, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And they're at the Baltimore Ravens, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd, also on Fox. The following week for their Week 9 game, or Week 8, excuse me, it'll be October 30th, 8:15 Eastern at home against the Las Vegas Raiders for Monday Night Football, October 30th. So, looking at that 5-game spread, again, they have a quick turnaround at Green Bay. Thursday games, one thing I've noticed so far this season, we're only a few weeks in, but Thursday games and Monday night games have been kind of funky as far as the teams and how they win and how they play. So it's really kind of hard to ascertain what they're going to do with such a quick turnaround. Same with Green Bay as well. With Green Bay being at home, that's going to help quite a bit, but it's not a situation where it's snowy or the weather's going to affect it by any means, in my opinion. So based on that analysis, I would say that the best team for that game is still gonna be Detroit, in my opinion. There's nothing that I'm hearing about any injuries or anything of that nature occurring, so based on the way they look against Atlanta, I could see Detroit winning this one close. This will be their first divisional matchup of the season. So this is one's gonna be probably the most important way to kick that off. Again, they're home 10 days later against the Carolina Panthers, and I'm taking them to win that game. They're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll talk more about the Buccaneers towards the end of the program for the Monday Night Football game, but based on the way Baker Mayfield looked when he got pressured, if Detroit can get any kind of pressure on Baker Mayfield, it's going to kind of make him very happy-footed and make him very rattled. And that's going to be the key to winning that football game, along with obviously having the offensive spurts you've had. So Detroit Tampa is going to be a good one. I like that one, and I'll have a more definitive prediction. I'm leaning towards Detroit, but I'll have a more definitive prediction on that one. At Baltimore, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern. Baltimore's problem, as I stated earlier, is injury. Personnel is falling; they're dropping like flies. I understand football is a tough game, but they're at a higher pace of injury than any team this early in the season to start. So we'll have to see if they can get healthy within a month's time. Again, that game's October 22nd, so that's literally 26 days away. That's about 4 Sundays away. So that gives them time to get healthy, but how healthy will they be by that time? And again, on the flip side, things could happen to Detroit too. But based on where things stand right now, Detroit is the better team just simply because of where we stand and who we have for each team. So hopefully Baltimore can get healthy in time. The Monday Night Football game versus the Raiders, I'm honestly taking Detroit even this far out because with the Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo, prior to his concussion that he suffered in the Sunday night game, I feel as though Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not bad, but he's all right. The interceptions he threw 3 interceptions in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers Sunday night. They were just very careless interceptions. He's actually in concussion protocol. We'll have to see if he's even going to play on Sunday, but even if he is there, I feel like Detroit can take that. Aiden Hutchinson, if he gets the right lick on him, that guy's going down. He doesn't make good decisions when his feet are happy. When he has to move around, he's never been a great scrambler to me, in my opinion. And I think they can harass him. So, looking at the schedule for the Detroit Lions here, getting back to them, in my opinion, as far as the Raiders go, I'm sorry, the Lions, excuse me, with the Packers, Panthers, Buccaneers, Ravens, and Raiders. I honestly, in my opinion, could see them being 4-1, 3-2 at worst. Well, again, things happen from week to week, but this team is looking right. They're looking right. The Seattle game was kind of tough because they lost a couple of key guys to injury, but they bounced back smoothly against Atlanta. I'll have an official prediction for you Thursday ahead of that Thursday night game at Green Bay. But again, 3-2, 4-1 is how they're looking. Again, the Detroit Lions to me, they're one of the teams that I had a lot of high hopes for, and I'm definitely looking to see what they can do and predict what they got going on. The Falcons, will take a quick peek look at their schedule and see what they're doing here next. They have an international game here to kick off the international games here on October 1st. That's 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, October 1st. And that's against the Jacksonville Jaguars at Wembley Stadium, October 1st. If you feel like waking up that early to watch that game, that game will be going for you here. The following week here, the Jacksonville, or I'm sorry, they'll be home against the Houston Texans, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The week after that, they will be home against the Washington Commanders at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. So they technically have three straight home games, but only two of them will be stateside. The Jacksonville game, you actually have to catch that on ESPN Plus. It won't be on television. So if you have an ESPN Plus subscription, you'll be able to catch that. Going back here to these games here, after they have that stretch of home games, they're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern. And then they have a Thursday, or actually, they do have a game the following week here at home against the Minnesota Vikings, October 5th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And we'll talk about the Minnesota Vikings here in a bit, but looking at this stretch of games that they have here over the course of the next 5 games or so, international games, as I stated, are tough. Even though it's a home game in essence, you guys are both traveling across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, to play a game in England. So it's just a different time zone. Bodies are already kind of tired from the season anyhow. And me personally here, those games are hard to gauge. Jacksonville really disappointed me this past weekend as well, and we'll touch on their result against Houston. And on the flip side, Atlanta hasn't shown me anything. So this again is back to one of those games that I'm gonna have to relegate to a pick'em status. And with that in mind here, I'll have a more definitive result for you. Actually, I'm actually gonna pick that game on Thursday because my broadcast will be starting after that game has already started for you. So I'll have a definitive prediction on Thursday for that game for international games. But at this point in time, I'm leaning towards Jacksonville just because they have the personnel to get it done. Atlanta has a lot of young pieces, and outside of Bijan Robinson, I haven't seen much from anybody on offense. He just kind of had an off day this past Sunday, but everybody else on offense for Atlanta, I haven't really seen anything yet. The Houston Texans and Atlanta Falcons, that's a pick 'em because Houston has actually kind of raised the bar as how I feel about them. I thought they were playing for a first pick, but they actually look really good with a lot of the young guys they have. And D'Amico Ryan's the first-year head coach. He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers prior to this season. He's really getting these guys fired up and ready to go. I really like his coaching method, and I really like what he's doing as far as the personnel and defensive side of the football as well. They have a lot of young guys, and he's getting them hyped up and ready to go. So Houston could beat them. Even though it's a home game, Houston to Atlanta is not that far, and Houston could beat them if they're not careful. If they don't really get it going on offense, they could get beat because Houston, they got young pieces and they just need more seasoning. Home against the the Washington Commanders. That game feels like a pick 'em as well because Washington was definitely brought back to reality with Buffalo this past weekend, and we'll touch on that also. So that feel like a pick 'em as well. These next few games are very like flip a coin to me. Even at Tampa Bay here, I can't really definitively say Tampa Bay will win that because of the way they looked last night. And at Tennessee that following week, Tennessee hasn't looked that great either. There's just a lot of muddled teams as far as the NFL goes, and that always kind of straightens itself out as things go on. But there's only really three teams that are definitively good or bad, in my opinion, on each side. So yeah, we'll kind of get to those results as we get closer to those games, but this could be a stretch for the Atlanta Falcons where they could go 1-4 or 4-1. It's kind of crazy to me how that looks. So that game right there is the next couple of games here will definitely tell me what Atlanta is going to be. And as far as what I think Detroit is going to be, I feel like they're already on their path to the success. They just need to develop the consistency across the board with the guys they have. Moving on to the next game here, the Green Bay Packers here squeaked by the New Orleans Saints 18-17 at home. They were actually down most of the game until the fourth quarter, and Jordan Love was able to get a couple of touchdowns late. What was actually the fatal blow to that team, the New Orleans Saints here, was an injury to Derek Carr to his shoulder. They actually did an MRI yesterday, and they actually found that he has a sprained AC joint in his shoulder. So Jameis Winston came in relief and was 10 of 16 for 101 yards here. Between the two of them, there was 204 passing yards. Derek Carr did throw a touchdown earlier in the game. He was 13 of 18 for 103 before leaving with that shoulder injury. On the flip side here for the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love was 22 of 44 for 259 yards with one touchdown and one interception. The touchdown was to Romeo Dobbs. And he looked all right, but he was definitely instrumental in getting this team back going. I feel like the Derek Carr injury definitely took the wind out of the New Orleans Saints' sails, and they really had a shot at taking that game in Lambeau Field. And that was the reason why I picked him. I felt like Derek Carr was the better quarterback between the two, but with him getting sacked on that play, and having to come out of the game, that really messed things up for them. As far as running the football, the Green Bay Packers didn't have that great of a day at all. They actually only had 95 yards on the ground, and their leading rusher, ironically, was their quarterback, Jordan Love, with 9 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown as well. So he had a touchdown through the air and a touchdown on the ground. And A.J. Dillon, the starting running back, he got 11 carries for 33 yards. So not much to speak about running on the ground for either team because the Saints weren't as effective either. They only had 77 yards on the ground as a team. Rookie running back Kendrick Miller out of TCU, he paced all running backs for the Saints with 9 carries for 34 yards. And Tony Jones Jr. followed that up with 8 carries for 31 yards. No touchdowns on the ground for that team. As far as receiving yards, as I mentioned, Romeo Doubs, a wide receiver, he had the touchdown, but he had 5 catches for 73 yards. Rookie wide receiver Jaden Reed had 3 catches for 63 yards, and rookie tight end Luke Musgrave 6 catches for 49 yards. On the flip side here for New Orleans here, Chris Olave, he led all receivers with 8 catches for 104 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. And wide receiver Michael Thomas had 6 catches for 50 yards. So it looks as though, again, they were having a nice pace and a nice connection with Carr to those two receivers specifically. But with him going down in the third quarter, that really, really took the wind out of the Saints' sails, and that's what allowed the Green Bay Packers to squeak back into the game. The Green Bay Packers didn't even have any points until the fourth quarter. Going into the fourth quarter, the score was 17-0 Saints. So if you changed the channel or went to another game, that was a situation where you probably had thought the Saints had to put away, and they were just able to get it together late. The Packers were, and I think they capitalized on that. If Carr needs to send, the Saints are going to take a wait and see approach with Carr's shoulder injury and look at it day to day. He went under additional testing after the game at a Green Bay area hospital to check for internal injuries, and they didn't find anything there. They're gonna do tests on him on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis and see what the status of that injury is. But if he does need to sit out, Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback for that team, and Taysom Hill will be on hand to take the occasional snap. He's very much a Swiss Army knife. He can run the football, he can throw the football, he can catch routes. So Taysom Hill, it's kind of crazy. You can't really call him a quarterback, but he's definitely capable of doing things that a quarterback needs to do. With the Packers getting that victory, that puts them at 2-1, while the Saints fall to 2-1. The Packers, looking at their schedule here over the course of the next few games here, again, they have that Thursday night matchup coming here with the Detroit Lions as well, 8:15 Eastern. Looking at that game, Aaron Jones here, if he can come back, that'll help them. And again, if Christian Watson can come back, they've both been having nagging hamstring injuries. If they can come back, that'll help them against Detroit because I'm going to stick with Detroit for now. But Green Bay's offense has been kind of stuck in the mud because those two guys have had the hamstring issues. They both, ironically, Watson hasn't even really played yet. He's tried to go, but he hasn't played yet in these games. And Aaron Jones, they've only had him for 3 quarters of a game because he injured his hamstring in the third quarter, week 1 at Chicago. They got the victory, but they didn't have him for much of that part of that game at the end. They're at Las Vegas 10 days later. I'm sorry, 11 days later. They have a Monday Night Football game coming up at the Las Vegas Raiders, October 9th, 8:15 Eastern. Then they have their bye week, week 6, before they're at Denver, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd. We're going to talk about Denver in a minute, but I could see Green Bay taking that, and I'll definitely explain why I feel that way. After that, they'll be home against the Minnesota Vikings, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th, and then home against the Los Angeles Rams, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 5th. Following that, November 12th, they will be at the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. So they won't be traveling too far, but they'll be at Pittsburgh, which is going to be a tough place to play. Looking at this team here, again, they have a quick turnaround Thursday here. Then they have the Monday Night Football game. And I think that's going to help them out. If they can get by Detroit, again, I touched on this in the previous broadcast. With the way that their games are spaced out, this will give them some time to kind of get healthy and get things right. Because with the Thursday night game, they'll have 11 days between that and their next game for Monday Night Football. And then they'll have 13 days after that because of the bye week. So, if it's a situation where you have Aaron Jones and Watson available at all, that'll be great. But if it's a situation where you don't have them, you won't have to do much to get them more time because of the way the schedule lays out. And this is very golden because during the football season, it's very optimal to have space like that between games, and it just doesn't happen that often on a week-to-week basis typically. So Green Bay, in my opinion, after the Detroit game here, I'm going to stick with Detroit for now. But after the great Detroit game, the next 5 games after that here, they could be a 3-2 football team as well if they can just get their guys right and kind of build cohesion with Jordan Love and his people on offense. The defense has been fair. They haven't been great, but they haven't been awesome. They've been very fair, very solid. And that's kind of what's helped them in their wins, specifically over New Orleans. They've definitely kept Jameis Winston in check and weren't able to do much. And then late in the game, Love was able to get things going. So, in my opinion, here, Green Bay, they're definitely going to be somebody to watch here as far as what they do. The New Orleans Saints, on the flip side here, I kind of touched on their division a little bit with when we were talking about the teams in their division, the Panthers and Buccaneers and things of that nature, as far as the Falcons and what they're going to do. The NFC South is still very muddled to me as I look at that division. I still just don't know who's gonna do what. But if David Carr has to miss any kind of time here, that's definitely gonna hurt them in a lot of ways here. Again, the division is all locked up because of the fact that them, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay all lost. The entire division lost, actually. So Carolina's sitting at the bottom at 0-3, but they're Atlanta and New Orleans and Tampa all sit at 2-1, and they're all just within a few points of scoring. So again, that division is still looking like I thought it would, a three-team race with the team bringing up the rear. So they're home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that'll actually be another divisional game that they have a chance to win. They're 1-0 so far with winning against Carolina. And if they can get this game, that'll help them keep pace. If David Carr is out, I'm taking Tampa. We'll just have to monitor his status throughout the week and see what they're doing. Again, if David Carr's out at New England on November 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS for the Week 5 matchup, I got to take the Patriots for that one. At Houston, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern, I could still see them winning that game. And then turning around for Thursday Night Football home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's not a far travel, but at the same time here, I could see them winning that game as well because Jacksonville, I think I might have overvalued what they are as a football team, and we'll discuss them more once we get to their game and discuss their results. 10 days later, at that point, the Saints will be visiting the Indianapolis Colts October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And that game right there also screams out pick 'em too because of the Colts. I won't know what they have until we kind of see who's healthy and kind of see how things shake out with them. But them getting a 2-1 is very surprising through the 3 games. I might have underestimated what they have, just like I've overestimated what teams are. So, looking at their next 5 games here, the Saints, based on injury, if it's a situation where Carr has to miss an extended period of time, I think a few of these games are losses, like 2 and 3 over the next 5 weeks, easily. The Houston game, I could see them winning that just because Houston, they looked good this past weekend against Jacksonville, but they're just not that consistent. I just feel like they had a lot of bursts of greatness on Sunday. So we'll just kind of see what they are as a whole team as the season progresses and as a whole who they are going to be here. So again, with the Saints going back to them as far as prognosticating their next few games, I could see them easily being a 3-2 football team here. Up next here, the next game we're going to talk about here. There's just so much to talk about as far as records for this game here. The final score, the Miami Dolphins defeat the Denver Broncos 70-20. 70. 7-0. 70-20. I sat back and I genuinely thought about this over the course of the couple of days here after I've taken in the game over this past 48-hour period. I literally sat back and thought about like when I've played Madden, high school football games that I've seen and watched and played in, college football games that I've watched, things of that nature. And I just can't think of many instances where a team scored 70. I mean, you see that in college football when like the University of Michigan plays against like Sacramento Institute of Technology or something like that, or like TCU when they were a great team prior to this season when they were going to championships, they schedule like Southern Methodist University. That's typically what you see in college when you see a team of this magnitude beat a team of another magnitude. When you hear 70-20 in a pro game that wasn't a video game, that's just nuts to me. And this is a new low for the Denver Broncos. Let's look at the records here that the Dolphins broke or touched on in this game here. Let's just touch on that first before we get to the statistics here. 70 points is the most that was scored in an NFL game since 1966. The Miami Dolphins had 726 yards of total offense, which is the second most ever in an NFL game. The record is 735 yards by the Los Angeles Rams in 1951. Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami quarterback here, now has 1,024 passing yards through 3 games, which is now the most in Dolphins history, passing Dan Marino through their first 3 games. They are the first team in NFL history to have 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns in the same game. This is also the 3rd time in history that a team has had a 300-yard passer, a 150-plus yard rusher, and a wide receiver or tight end get 150-plus receiving yards in the same game. Should I keep going? There's just so much here that the Miami Dolphins did. And the Broncos, they just didn't show any kind of fight, any kind of passion, any kind of, like, want for this game. It's just nuts to me that I saw a game like this from start to finish. Tua Tagovailoa was 23 of 26 for 309 yards with 4 touchdowns. They took him out early in the 4th quarter, and his backup, Mike White, was 2 of 2. So he only threw 2 balls, and they were both caught for 67 yards and a touchdown. He threw a touchdown pass to Robbie Chosen that went for 67 yards. Nuts. Wow. Russell Wilson was 23 of 38 for 306 yards for the Broncos with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. The 1 touchdown being to Courtland Sutton, who actually had a pretty decent day, all things considered, 8 catches to 91 yards. On the ground, as I mentioned here, the Miami Dolphins, they dominated 350 yards total on the ground. They were led by Devin Achani, 18 carries for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's the rookie out of Texas A&M here. He was technically 3rd string, but with Jeff Williams going on IR, he was bumped to 2nd string here behind Raheem Mostert, who had 13 carries for 82 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chris Brooks also added 9 catches for 66 yards, but he had a 1 carry that went for 52 yards. So at that point, he only had 8 carries for 14 yards outside of that, but inconsequential, right? On the flip side for the Broncos, they only had 69 yards on the ground, with Javonte Williams 11 carries for 42 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin 5 carries, 15 yards. There's just not much to talk about with this game. It was just total domination from start to finish. The Miami Dolphins scored 14 or more points in every quarter. First team ever to do that. I also forgot to mention that as well. Tyreek Hill had 9 catches for 157 yards for a touchdown. Robbie Chosen, I did mention his 1 catch for a touchdown. Raheem Mostert also had 7 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. And Devin Achani, running back, he also had 4 catches for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns. Major moves. The Miami Dolphins, they look like the best team in the NFL right now, because that offense was just fire. They didn't look this good last week against the Miami Dolphins. I'm not sure if the Miami Dolphins just know this team better. And furthermore, they didn't have Jalen Waddle because of the concussion he suffered against the Patriots in that game as well. So it just makes you sit back and just think to yourself, 70. I don't expect to see 70 again anytime soon, because, again, that's just nuts. These are professional. These men have bills. These men have mortgages. These men get paid. A lot of these college guys, when you see those blowouts, they don't get paid. They have classes. You know what I mean? I just don't understand how a pro team just can't show any level of fight. And to go even further, the Denver Broncos, if you're Sean Payton, you have egg on your face. If memory serves me correctly, you said that Nathaniel Hackett did the worst coaching job in history for this team. Nathaniel Hackett didn't give up 70. He gave up 52, but that's still not 70. Nathaniel Hackett won his first 2 games at home. You blew your first 2 games at home. You have the worst coaching job in Broncos history right now, if we're being real. And the thing that kills me the most is he's doing a lot of talking, and then when it's time for him to talk and when it's time for him to really speak up and take accountability, he doesn't want to. Being short with reporters, they have questions to ask. 70 points is nuts. 70 points is nuts. If you see North Carolina AT get beat by 70 by Clemson, that's one thing, but these are professionals, as I stated. That's dumb. So I just don't feel comfortable picking the Broncos to do anything. I truly hope they have some fight coming into this team, coming into this game next week. We'll look at the Dolphins first and see what they're doing, but After the way these games shook up, there's only 4 teams left that are 0-3: the Broncos, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Carolina Panthers. Those are the only 4 teams left that are looking for their first win. The Miami Dolphins are actually at Buffalo on Sunday, November 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. I'm sorry, October 1st, sorry, not November, October 1st. So that's this Sunday coming up. The following week, they're home against the Giants, October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And they're also home against the Carolina Panthers, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. At Buffalo, home against the Giants, home against the Panthers, I can see them winning all those. They're at Philly for Sunday Night Football, October 22nd, 8:20 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then they're home against the New England Patriots in another divisional matchup, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Philadelphia is going to be a slugfest. I'm very curious to see what that defensive front for Philadelphia can do with this Miami offense because Denver didn't give them any pressure whatsoever. There was never a point where Tua's jersey looked like it was going to get dirty. He just was upright and was able to do what he wanted all day. He threw no-look passes like Curry. That's stupid on a football field. So I don't know. I don't know. This team looks really, really good, and they looked all right to start. I was more convinced of what they looked like week one because of how Tyreek went off against the Chargers than week two. I kind of thought New England had a good game plan, but they just couldn't get it going on offense. That's ultimately what gave them the win. But 70 is 70. 70 is 70. And through 3 games, when you count the 70, this team has scored 130 points in 3 games. So to me, if they can get by Buffalo and get that win, and if they can get the Philadelphia win a few weeks after that, that's a 5-0 football team before they travel to play the Kansas City Chiefs on November 5th. That game is a ways away, and again, that's considered a home game for the Chiefs, but it's being played at Frankfurt Stadium in Germany. That's another international game down the line. Again, things are going to happen for this team, and things are going to happen as far as the scheduling and as far as injuries and things of that nature. Games get flexed when they become more interesting. That's something to keep in mind here for Sunday Night Football. Timing could change as well. So we'll just have to touch on that as it gets closer, but nuts. If you're the Denver Broncos on the flip side, they're at the Chicago Bears on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. That's their week 4 matchup. Um, like I said, I don't feel comfortable picking them. I mean, I know it's the Bears, and the Bears have their own set of problems at 0-3, but man, the Broncos 70 points is just really hard to fathom, and I just can't even wrap my head around that score. They're at Chicago, then they're home against the New York Jets, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. That team has their own problems as well. Then they're at the Kansas City Chiefs for Thursday Night Football, October 12th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime. I definitely see that being a loss. Then they're home against Green Bay, October 22nd, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. They'll be getting Green Bay off of a bye week. So like I said, the timing is great for Green Bay, and they could come in and steal that game. And then the Broncos are home for the Kansas City Chiefs on October 29th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern before they get their own bye week as well. And like I said, the Bears, that's the only game where I'm still going to pick the Broncos. I'm going to give them one more chance to make me look good. But other than that, beyond that, even with the Jets, depending on how things shake out with them, they didn't beat the Jets last year, and the Jets didn't have Aaron Rodgers in the mix. They still had Zach Wilson. There was no hope of Aaron Rodgers yet with that team, and they still didn't beat them at that time either. So the Broncos, it just makes me wonder. 2 things to point out with the Broncos here before we move on to the next game here. One, luckily for them, they're out of that time period of having to give up draft picks to the Seattle Seahawks. That's done now. And you've already given up another draft pick to the New Orleans Saints in order to procure Sean Payton's services as your head coach. Can this team even fix themselves in the draft? Because in the first 7 rounds, as a result of all the draft picks that you had to give up with the trades that you made, in the first 7 rounds of this past draft in 2023, they only selected 5 players. Now, one of which is Marvin Mims Jr., who's looked like a stud so far. He looks great, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. But the Broncos have only picked 5 players in the first 7 rounds in this last draft. And of course, in 22, you weren't able to get a top round pick draft at all because of the first and seconds you had to give up. It makes me wonder what they can even do because the salary cap with Russell Wilson as it stands, out of all quarterbacks, he's the 5th highest quarterback on average. And across the league, he has the sixth biggest chunk of cap space for the Broncos as well. So not only is a situation where you have an albatross and a lot of holes on your team with your defense regressing, you have a situation on offense where, like, can you even draft a quarterback for the future? Because there's gonna be other teams gonna be bad too, and they're gonna be looking to try to get Caleb Williams at USC too. You're not the only team that's gonna want him. Is that even a possibility for the Broncos? Because at this point, this is not looking like a team that's gonna get out of their division or even to the playoffs at any point at all this season. That'll put them at 8 straight seasons without going to the playoffs. And on top of that, how do you improve? Who do you improve? You're pretty much stuck with Sean Payton, and you're stuck with Russell Wilson because of the assets you gave up. So it's going to be tough sledding for the Broncos. This is not a quick fix by any means, and I just don't see where they go from here. So we'll just have to keep pace and see what they do and just kind of watch. But it's not looking good for the Denver Broncos by any means. Moving on to the next result here, the game that kind of blew me away as to how it ended. That the Los Angeles Chargers got their first win of the season at the Minnesota Vikings, defeated them 28-24. Justin Herbert had 40 of 47 for 405 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he just spun the ball really well here with that over 400 yards. Keenan Allen had a nifty play here, and he threw his own passing touchdown here to Joshua Palmer. He was 1 of 1. That was a 49-yard catch toss to him. That looked really nifty as well. Keenan Allen, obviously a wide receiver, but he has quarterback ability. He was quarterback in college, so he has the ability to spin the ball really well. For Minnesota, Kirk Cousins was 32 of 50 for 367 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. Looked pretty good as usual. He's definitely been filling up the stat sheet, and he's definitely among the top 5 for passing yards and touchdowns, but Minnesota just can't get that win. They're now in a 0-3 situation as well at the bottom of their division with Chicago, and it's just not looking good here. They've had 2 games, and they've just let both of them slip away in heartbreaking fashion. As far as running the football, Los Angeles didn't need to because they just really throw the ball. This was a very pass-happy defense, even with the schemes that they ran. Combined as a team, they only had 30 rushing yards on the ground. Austin Eckler was out for this game as well with the ankle issue. They're definitely confident he can play on Sunday. We'll have to monitor that situation throughout the week, but they are confident he can play Sunday. But that running game is not there for the Los Angeles Chargers. On the flip side, Alexander Madison, he actually looked a lot better, and he has shown that he can do what he needs to when needed at this time. 20 carries for 90 or 93 yards here. It was just below 5 yards per carry. He didn't find the end zone, but he did get the ball going and kind of kept the chains moving. He had a nice 15-yard run in the second quarter that definitely let him show his burst when he gets up in the open field. And I definitely liked that. I'm definitely still looking to see more out of Alexander Madison. As I said, through 2 games, he only had 62 yards. So he's now up to 155 yards on the season through 39 carries. That's about 4 yards per carry on average, roughly. So we'll have to see if he keeps pace with that and keeps going here. The Minnesota Vikings, to me, it wasn't about the personnel doing what they needed to. It was about the play calling. Because looking at the receiving yards here, there was definitely a shootout between the two teams here. They both had heavy hitters on both sides of the ball. But what it came down to was in the end here. For the Minnesota Vikings, Justin Jefferson had 7 catches for 149 yards and a touchdown. He definitely found the end zone, and that's definitely something they're going to need more of for him. TJ Hawkins had 8 catches for 78 yards, and Jordan Addison added 6 catches for 52 yards. For Los Angeles, the Keenan Allen had a great day, 18 catches for 215 yards. He found the end zone through the air, but didn't find the end zone catching it himself. That went to Mike Williams here, 7 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, the Chargers are not going to have his services after that game. He actually tore an ACL in the third quarter late in that game, and he's going to be out for the rest of the 2023 season. So they're not going to have Mike Williams going forward. And that's probably going to result in more snaps and more routes being ran for Quentin Johnson, the rookie out of TCU. I've touched on a bit earlier in the series. He has 2 catches for 10 yards in this game, and that's obviously going to be more needed from him with Mike Williams going down. Mike Williams would be a number 1 receiver on a handful of teams, but with Keenan Allen's presence, he's typically the number 2. They expect him to be ready for camp. ACLs, those are typically a long, tedious injury. I've never experienced that, thank God, but tearing an ACL, it's always typically an 8 to 12 month rehab and healing process. So best of luck to him, and hopefully he does get back soon. But that's going to be a huge loss. And if Eckler misses any more time, we'll have to monitor his situation throughout the week. That's definitely going to hurt them. But the Chargers were lucky to get their first win here. This is what occurred in the final minute of the game here. Minnesota did have a chance to take the lead because the Chargers had their ball on their 24-yard line, and instead of electing to punt, they decided to go for it and didn't get it. So the Minnesota Vikings got the ball on the Chargers' 24-yard line with under a minute left here. But unfortunately, Cousins threw an interception to linebacker Kenneth Murray, the fourth-year man out of Oklahoma, and that's what sealed the deal for the Chargers. The Chargers almost gave this game to the Vikings because why in the world wouldn't you punt that? Brandon Staley, that move was very risky. And I genuinely feel like it was done to show that they have some sort of courage, but it almost cost them. And if you're the Los Angeles Chargers, you're very lucky to get off the schneid with that game. You're no longer in last place. That belongs to Denver, but they almost gave that game to Minnesota. Um, Looking at the Chargers' schedule here, again, they escaped with that victory here to improve themselves to 1-2 as the Vikings fall to 0-3 on the season. The Los Angeles Chargers are home against the Las Vegas Raiders on October 1st, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on CBS. That'll be their first AFC West matchup of the year. Then they have a bye week, week 5. So if it's a situation where Eckler misses this game, I'm not sure if he will. This is something that they're continuing to monitor, and they're kind of expecting him to possibly play. It's just kind of up in the air, and they're kind of monitoring on a day-to-day basis. But if it's a situation where he has to miss this game, at least having a week 5 bye kind of give you the ability to get him back because losing Mike Williams this early is going to hurt. Definitely going to hurt this team. But home against the Las Vegas Raiders, October 1st, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to give them that game. After their week 5 bye week, they're home against the Dallas Cowboys, 8:15 Eastern for Sunday Night Football, October 16th. We'll talk about Dallas in a minute here and talk about their game against the Cardinals. They had a rough day, but that game could be a possible shootout because Justin Herbert is the better quarterback, and Dak Prescott, again, touching on how he was on Sunday, I stated this earlier in the year. If they have a situation, the Dallas Cowboys, where that defense doesn't play lights out, can Dak Prescott show that he can take the game over if the defense is slipping? And ultimately, that was a no. So that could be a situation where Los Angeles could steal it based on what Dallas is able to do in the next couple of weeks on their own. The Chargers are at Kansas City October 22nd, that following Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then they're home for the Chicago Bears October 29th, 8:20 p.m. Eastern for Sunday Night Football. At following week, they're at the New York Jets, 8:15 p.m. November 6th. That's a Monday Night Football game. At the Jets and home against the Bears look like dubs for the Chargers based on the way those two teams have looked so far. I could see those being dubs. If they could win this Raiders game, get the bye week, and get Eckler back, they have a shot against Dallas because Dallas, they showed some holes in that offense, and if they can get anything kind of schemed up, they could take that game. Getting a win was much needed at Minnesota, very much needed. Over the next 5 games, I could see this team being 3-2. We'll kind of go over those games as we get closer, but if the Chargers can be 3-2, that'll kind of allow them to keep pace a little bit, depending on what the Chiefs do, because I don't see the Raiders or Broncos being a factor. At this point here, if you can keep as many guys as you can and get your rookies kind of involved, Quentin Johnston, get him involved in the offense, that'll definitely help and get this team right where they need to be. On the flip side here for the Vikings at 0-2, or I'm sorry, 0-3 now in that division. Luckily for you, you do have company with the Chicago Bears, but that doesn't make things any better because you've lost 2 home games here. And then the Philadelphia game that you had for Thursday Night Football, you played offense, but they played offense better. And that's what that came down to. Their next game is at the Carolina Panthers, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox, week 4. Andy Dalton played in place of Bryce Young in that game. And honestly, the Carolina Panthers looked better with him in there. So we'll have to see if he's in the mix or not for that game. The following week, the Vikings are home against the Kansas City Chiefs, October 8th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. They're at the Chicago Bears, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. And then home for the San Francisco 49ers, Monday Night Football, October 23rd, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. That following week, Sunday, they're at the Green Bay Packers, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. So, I'm going to take them to beat the Carolina Panthers in Chicago for sure. So they're at Carolina, home against Kansas City. That's always going to be tough. Kansas City's always going to be a tough out, and their defense actually looks really good. So I'm taking Kansas City to take that to get that game. At Chicago, I could see them taking that game because that's a divisional game, and Chicago to me hasn't shown anything that indicates that they're going to be great at all. They don't know what to do with Justin Fields, so I can see Minnesota taking that game as well. Home against San Francisco, that's going to be a great matchup, but San Francisco is ultimately going to take that game. And at Green Bay, that's kind of a toss up to me, but in my opinion, I think Green Bay will probably squeak that one in. We'll get to these games as far as an official prediction, but looking at their next 5 games, Minnesota to me should and could be 3-2, but they've lost a few close games here. And they have it's not even a situation where they've been blown out. They've lost their 3 games by a combined 13 points. So it's not like they're getting blown out, but at the same time, they're not making the right plays at the end to indicate that they want the victory. So we'll just have to see what's going to happen with the Vikings as far as when they can get that first win of the season. And the Chargers getting their first win of the season, we'll have to see if they can keep pace here and keep in close quarters with the Chiefs. Because, like I said, the Raiders and Broncos, those 2 teams are not going to be a factor. Jimmy Garoppolo is probably possibly going to miss time, and the Raiders just don't look as consistent as they need to be on both sides of the ball. They have guys, but they don't have consistency. The Broncos, they just don't have guys or consistency. So we'll just have to see how that's going to go. The following game we're going to talk about here is the Patriots and the Jets. The Patriots winning that game 15-10 to get their first win of the season. The Jets have now lost 2 straight since winning their opener over the Bills. For the Patriots, neither team really passed the ball really well, but the Patriots, Mac Jones was 15 of 29 for 201 yards and a touchdown strike to Pharaoh Brown. That was a 58-yard strike. It is very electric. It definitely got the crowd going. On the flip side, Zach Wilson was 18 of 36 for 157 yards. He was 50% completion rate, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he just didn't look good at all. As far as running the football here, the New England Patriots definitely showed that they got a dominant tandem there. 157 yards on the ground with Zeke Elliott getting 16 carries for 80 yards and Ramondre Stevenson getting 19 carries for 59 yards. There were no touchdowns on the ground for them. For the New York Jets, Dalvin Cook, 8 carries of 18 yards. Breece Hall, 12 carries of 18 yards. They had 38 yards on the ground with Nick Bawden carrying the ball 1 yard for a touchdown. And yeah, the Jets offense just did not look good. There were just definitely moments here where New England just did what they wanted to, even though the score doesn't indicate it. And the Jets just never had a shot. They were never at any point in the lead, and they just never showed that they could win that game. Pharaoh Brown, as I mentioned, for the Patriots, 2 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Kendrick Bourne also had 4 catches for 46 yards, no touchdowns. Devontae Parker, 2 catches for 19 yards. Interestingly enough, Mac Jones, he connected with 9 different receivers, but the only receivers that really did any damage were Pharaoh Brown and a little bit with Kendrick Bourne. As far as the Jets, Garrett Wilson had 5 catches for 48 yards. Alan Lazard, 3 catches for 39 yards. Tyler Conklin, the tight end, 3 catches for 26 yards. This team is just very lifeless with Zach Wilson as quarterback. Robert Saleh, the coach for the Jets, they stated that they're going to stick with Zach Wilson. They're going to stick with him. They did bring in free agent quarterback Trevor Siemian, who was released by the Cincinnati Bengals after training camp back in August ahead of the season. They're going to bring him into the quarterback room and also have Tim Boyle in there as well as the backup to Zach Wilson. So, yikes. That Patriots defense, they got to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson definitely looked like he saw the boogeyman. He was sacked 3 times, and they didn't even get 200 yards on offense. How long are they going to stick with this? That's hard to say. The Jets, they really got to figure out something because this is not going to be winning football for them. With the Patriots getting their win against the Jets, their week 4 matchup is at the Dallas Cowboys, October 1st, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. They're home against the Saints, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 8th. They're at the Las Vegas Raiders on October 15th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. They are home against the Buffalo Bills, October 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then they're at the Miami Dolphins, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. The New England Patriots, to me, with them getting that first win, I feel it was a lot of ineptitude by the Jets that gave them that ability because 15 points under normal circumstances is not going to get you a victory. Ask the last year Denver Broncos if that works. Against Dallas. Dallas, we'll talk about them in a moment as far as what they did against Arizona, but the New England Patriots are going to need more points to keep pace with Dallas, but I can see Dallas winning that game. As far as home against the Saints, I really got to know if Derek Carr is going to be available because if it's Jameis Winston, I feel like they can cook up a defensive scheme to make him turn the football over. So we'll have to see if it's a situation where Derek Carr is back. At the Raiders, October 15th, that's going to be a situation where they're going against Las Vegas head coach Josh McDaniels, who was an assistant under Belichick for many years. And he's going to have something drawn up by now as far as harassing Mac Jones because he did work with him before a season before heading to Vegas to take that job. So if that defense at Vegas can give them any kind of problems on offense, the Patriots, I think they'll take that game. But I just don't really trust Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. So we'll just have to see. The Patriots are home against Buffalo, and I would still take Buffalo to win that football game. And I'm still taking at Miami, the Miami Dolphins to win that game. So at best, I could see the Patriots being 2-3 over the course of their next 5 games. Meanwhile, the Jets, I touched on a couple of their games already. They're home against Kansas City for Sunday Night Football, and I see them losing that. Even at the Denver Broncos, I can see them losing that game. It's tough to take Denver to win anything, but at Denver, I can see them harassing Zach Wilson. Home for the Eagles, I got the Eagles winning that. They do have a bye week, week 7, and then they're home or they're at the New York Giants October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. I say that because they play in the same stadium, but it's considered a road game for them and home for the Giants. But the Giants, I touched on this also earlier in the other broadcast. Daniel Jones is the better quarterback to Zach Wilson. He's better than any of the quarterbacks they have in their room. And when he's shown he can do more, he does do more. Whereas Zach Wilson, we're still waiting on those moments from him. So give me the Giants, and then also give me the Chargers the following week, November 6th, 8:15 Eastern for Monday Night Football. This Jets team is probably going to be in the hunt for a quarterback, but the question you ask yourself is, do we want another quarterback? We put kind of mortgaged everything on Aaron Rodgers being our quarterback, and he's going to be 40 on top of that. And Zach Wilson is not trade worthy. He's not a guy that you say to yourself, "Ooh, we want him in the mix." It's just not going to work. So this team is going to fall apart very fast, and if they don't figure it out here, somebody's going to lose their job. That's just how that works. Whether it's offensive coordinator, the head coach, they're going to have to get it together and get it together fast. I'm switching gears to an AFC East team that actually had a great matchup here and a great victory over their offensive opponent here. The Bills defeated the Commanders 37-3. They led the game 16-0, but they scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to break the game open. Josh Allen's line here was pretty fair if you look at it, but he made impact all over the field. He was 20 of 32 for 218 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Sam Howell on the flip side for Washington was 19 of 29 for 170 yards and 4 interceptions. That was definitely what gave Buffalo those extra possessions that they needed. On the ground for Buffalo, James Cook had 15 carries for 98 yards, but he didn't get the touchdown. That belonged to Josh Allen, who had 3 carries for 46 yards, including a 23-yard scamper to score the football. Latavius Murray added with 5 catches for 15 yards and a touchdown, as did Damian Harris with the 5 carries for 15 yards, but no touchdowns. Washington did get 105 yards on the ground, but again, with Sam Howell turning the ball over that many times, that definitely doomed them. Brian Robinson led all their carries with 10 carries for 70 yards. As far as receiving the ball, Stephon Diggs for Buffalo had 8 catches for 111 yards, but didn't find the end zone. That actually belonged to Gabe Davis with his 1 catch for 35 yards going for a score. He was targeted 4 times, but only got the 1 haul for a touchdown. For Washington, on the flip side, Curtis Samuel had 2 catches for 54 yards. Terry McLaurin, 6 catches for 41 yards, and Cole Turner, 4 catches for 35 yards, but none of them were able to find the end zone. This was all Buffalo all day, and there was just really nothing that the Commanders could do. They just got squashed. And with it being at home, it was just very demoralizing. With Buffalo, with that opening loss to the Jets, I feel like they've kind of righted the ship with the way they've outscored their opponents. Between beating the Raiders at home and going at Washington and doing what they did, they've outscored those two teams 75-13. So it looks like they're definitely on a mission here. Their clash of the Titans next will be against the Miami Dolphins at home October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. They have an international game the following week, October 8th, against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. It's again being played in England at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But I'm still going to take Buffalo to win that football game. That's a home game. It's just going to be across the ocean. They're home again for the New York Giants on October 15th for Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. Eastern. I'm still taking them to win that football game as well. They're at New England the following week, that following Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS, and I'm still taking them to win that game as well. Home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Thursday Night Football, October 26th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. And then they'll have a turnaround of 10 days after that because for Sunday Night Football, they will be playing October 5th, 8:20 p.m. Eastern time. So the Buffalo Bills, to me, definitely righted the ship. They definitely look like the dominant team I was expecting to start. And once they get past this Miami Dolphins game, we'll have to see how things shake out. Once they get past the Miami Dolphins, things are looking very, very good for Buffalo on their schedule. I can see them going 4-1 at worst, depending on what happens with Miami, because those home games against Jacksonville, even though one is in England, Jacksonville just hasn't really shown me a lot quite yet. So I'm going to take Buffalo to be a 4-1 team over those next 5 games here. On the Washington Commanders, luckily for them, there was a couple of speed bumps in their division that occurred as a whole. With the Cowboys losing and the Giants also losing, that kind of keeps them at pace a bit. They and Dallas are behind the 3-0 Eagles, but to me, this kind of showed what Washington really is, and what I really thought they were. They squeaked by Arizona, and Denver gave them that game in week 2. So, in my opinion, that's kind of what they are. They're at the Philadelphia Eagles for their first divisional matchup here on Sunday, October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then they have a Thursday night game here against the Chicago Bears at home, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. I took them to win that game and to lose to Philly. They're at Atlanta 10 days later, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. Then they're at the New York Giants October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern, also on CBS. The following week, they're home against the Philadelphia Eagles again for their second matchup against them in that time period, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th. So that'll be their second divisional matchup knocked out with Philly already. Philadelphia, they look like the top team in the NFC here to me. Actually, I would put them second because the way they looked against Tampa last night and the way San Francisco looked with their 3-0, I'm going to put them at second. Dallas, they stumbled a bit, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But to me, I think Washington has the ability to split with Philly just due to the simple fact that they know them really well. And that's kind of how the NFC East is. They kind of beat each other up and they all end up like 4-2, 3-3, just based on how things shake out. So I can see them splitting with Philly. If they were to do that and beat the other teams in the middle, this Washington football team could go 3-2 over their next 5 games. We'll have to see. But they could go 3-2 over their next 5 games and still kind of be in shape to shake things out there. But Sam Howell, he can't give teams possessions as they did. So they'll have to get that better, get that fixed, and get Sam Howell back to what he was in week 2 against Denver. Moving on to the next game here, and a somewhat shocking result, in my opinion, here. The Houston Texans went into Everbank Stadium and defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars 37-17. CJ Stroud looked poised and looked definitely better in the pocket than he had in his previous outings there. 20 of 30 for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had another somewhat subpar rough day. 27 of 40 for 279 yards and a touchdown, but he also threw an interception as well. Trevor Lawrence, he looked all right week 1 here with their victory over the Colts, but he didn't look good in this game or last week against the Chiefs. And these were home games, which is why that's pretty concerning here. As far as running the football, he did get spelled a little bit by Travis Etienne, who had 19 carries for 88 yards. And receiving the football, he had 4 catches for 50 yards, but they didn't find the end zone. Trevor Lawrence was actually their second leading rusher with 3 carries for 12 yards. Those were typically were plays where the pocket broke down and he had to scramble out of the pocket. And that's typically what happened with this particular game here. Going back and looking at the other Houston side of things here, Devin Singletary had 9 carries for 41 yards. Dameon Pierce had 14 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown. They had 86 rushing yards total on the ground as a team if you include C.J. Stroud as well. So between passing the football and running the football, it was very balanced on the Jacksonville side because looking at the receiving statistics, C.J. Stroud connected with 8 different receivers here, but the top day belonged to Tank Dell. He had 5 catches for 145 yards and a touchdown here. Tank Dell, the rookie out of the University of Houston, is looking pretty solid. And he feels like he's home because he's from Houston, so he didn't have to go anywhere. Nico Collins, he's pretty solid too, but he had a very quiet day with 2 catches for 34 yards. Robert Woods adding 3 catches for 34 yards as well. So very balanced attack, but Tank Dell was the guy that made it work. On the Jacksonville side, Evan Ingram had 7 catches for 67 yards. Christian Kirk had 4 catches for 51 yards or 54 yards, excuse me, and a touchdown. And Travis Etienne Jr. 4 catches for 50 yards. So in total, he was able to get over 100 yards in total offense between rushing and receiving, 138 to be exact. So again, it's Trevor Lawrence. He connected with 9 different receivers, but none of them were able to find the end zone outside of Kirk, and the offense just didn't do what it should as far as what I expected. C.J. Stroud, this was his first great game. His first he showed the promise that the Texans were looking for. And with Trevor Lawrence, he's failing to find success against the defense. Now there was a blocked field goal that occurred, and there was a fumble by wide receiver Jamal Agnew as well, that definitely affected Jacksonville. But it's just one of those things where Lawrence, he just didn't even look good because that Christian Kirk touchdown that he scored was early in the fourth quarter, and he didn't have any touchdowns last week against Kansas City, so he went 7 quarters without a touchdown. They're looking to up in Atlanta next week in that London matchup, but Jacksonville, to me, they're not looking like the team I expected them to be. Jacksonville and Houston are now both 1-2 in the division, and again, they have an international game Sunday, 9:30 Eastern, against the Atlanta Falcons. The following week, looking at their schedule, they have another international game against the Bills at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So the Jacksonville Jaguars actually have 2 international games in a row. And as I mentioned in the last broadcast, it makes me wonder if they're going to just stay in England between having to play Atlanta and Buffalo in back-to-back weeks. Their next true home game is actually going to be the Indianapolis Colts November 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. And then 4 days later for Thursday Night Football, they're at the New Orleans Saints, October 19th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, Amazon Prime. They'll be at the Pittsburgh Steelers 10 days later, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on CBS. 2 international games in a row is unprecedented. They usually typically give you the one, and then you may have one a few weeks later. But the NFL have them 2 international games in a row is kind of interesting. Those are hard to prognosticate because there's no real home field advantage. If you look at the crowd for a lot of those international games, they're all wearing different jerseys from different teams that they like, and they're just picking out who they like and who they really enjoy watching. So there's no real home field advantage for either team. And just based on the way Jacksonville is playing and based on the way Atlanta and Buffalo played, I could see Jacksonville winning one of each of those at international games. They could win against Atlanta and lose to Buffalo. So I'll just say that for the moment. Home against the Colts, they did win the game, but I feel like the Colts have gotten better since that week 1 loss to the Jaguars. So give me the Colts to split the season series with Jacksonville. At the Saints, Thursday Night Football. Thursday night, as I stated earlier in the broadcast, Thursday night games and Monday night games are kind of wonky. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But at Pittsburgh, I could see them losing that game because Pittsburgh's defense has been harassing quarterbacks. So let's say for the sake of argument, they're 3-2 over the next 5 games. That's fair. Because like I said, the AFC South, excuse me, is very muddled, and I just don't see a dominant team quite yet. The Titans haven't figured it out. The Colts have had a couple injuries. Houston just got on the board with their first win. So with Houston winning that game, they'll be home against the Pittsburgh Steelers October 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. They'll be at the Atlanta Falcons October 8th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then they're home against the New Orleans Saints October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox as well. They have a bye week, week 7. So week 8, they'll be back at the Carolina Panthers October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. And they'll be home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 1 p.m. Eastern, November 5th on CBS. So after they play against the Pittsburgh Steelers here, they'll be playing against the entire NFC South, Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina, Tampa. And as I stated, that's a muddled team. I'm going to say they lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Pittsburgh Steelers have been fantastic on defense. And let's just split the difference with the NFC South matchups that they have and say they go 2-2. That would put the Houston Texans at 3-2 over their next 5 games. Or, I'm sorry, 2-3 because I got them losing to Pittsburgh. And that would still put them at 3-5. The AFC South is by no means defined, and that doesn't put them out of it. Like I said, Indianapolis is 2-1. Houston, Jacksonville, and Tennessee are 1-2. So anything can happen with that division. The Jacksonville Jaguars, on the flip side, I expect them to run away with this division. I picked a lot of their games early to be winners, and I've been wrong about 2, obviously. Well, I had them losing to the Chiefs, but I had them beating the Houston Texans, and that just did not go the way they should. Again, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, um, I just don't know what they are yet. And with after going over their games here, we'll just have to see what they do, but it's kinda hard to say. We'll just have to see with the Jaguars, but as these games get closer, I'll definitely have a better prediction for you. The next game we're gonna talk about here, the Indianapolis Colts here and the Baltimore Ravens. Indianapolis won that game 22-19 here. Over the in overtime, actually, they kicked the field goal late to win that game. Gardner Minshew was 27 of 44 for 227 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson was 22 of 31 for 202 yards, but he did find touchdowns on the ground. He didn't throw any. He was 14 carries for 101 yards to lead all running backs for Baltimore. Zach Moss, on the flip side, had 30 carries for 122 yards, averaging about 4 yards per carry to lead Indianapolis. And that's definitely what paced them through the game here. The Indianapolis Colts, they ran the ball really well. That's one thing that definitely stuck out to me, and I definitely hope that's something they can continue, even without having Jonathan Taylor on the team. Um, Looking at the receiving core for the Indianapolis Colts here, Michael Pittman had 9 catches for 77 yards, with Josh Downs bringing up the rear 8 catches for 57 yards. For Baltimore, OBJ was out on this game, so Zay Flowers was the leading receiver with 8 catches for 48 yards. Nelson Aguilar, 4 catches for 39 yards, and tight end Mark Andrews, 4 catches for 35 yards, but none of them found the end zone. To me, the Colts just pounded the ball down. They just pounded the ball really well. Lamar Jackson running the ball is not a surprise to me. But if you take away Lamar Jackson's running yards, they had 85 yards on the ground with no touchdown. So he was the quarterback and the running back for this team, as he typically is. The Ravens fall to 1-1, or 2-1, excuse me. The Colts improved to 1-1. Looking at the Colts here, their next couple of games here, to me, they're in a very like odd situation as far as what they're going to do. We just don't really know yet. But Anthony Richardson, I'm not sure if he'll be back. We'll definitely announce as we get closer to these games here. They're home their next couple of games here against the Rams and Titans, respectively, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox and on CBS, respectively. They're at Jacksonville, 1 p.m. Eastern at CBS, October 15th. And then they're home for the next couple of games after that. The Cleveland Browns, 1 p.m. Eastern, and the New Orleans Saints, also 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. 4 of the next 5 games are at home, so that definitely helps. But at the same time, that doesn't mean anything because they lost at home and they've won both their games on the road. So, based on what I'm looking at, they could be 3-2 over those next 5 games. I could see them beating the Rams and possibly the Titans and possibly the Jaguars. Again, we'll have to see. They're at Jacksonville, so we'll just have to see. They already took the L at home, so maybe they can get some revenge on them. But the Colts, to me, getting that win and putting them on top of the division for now, that's definitely huge for them, and then we'll just have to see if they can keep pace with that. The Ravens, as far as I'm concerned, it was definitely disappointing to see them drop that game because I honestly thought they were going to take that to improve to 3-0 and keep pace with Miami, but that just wasn't to be. Their next 2 games are at Cleveland and at Pittsburgh, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS, each of those games, November 1st and November 8th. And AFC North matchups here, they have beaten the Cincinnati Bengals so far, but Cleveland's defense is humming, Pittsburgh's defense is humming. So those could be L's. Again, they have an international game here October 15th here on the NFL Network, 9:30 a.m. Eastern at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in England. And then they're home against the Detroit Lions October 22nd. That's going to be a good one. At the Arizona Cardinals, October 29th, 4:29 p.m. Eastern on CBS. So Baltimore, their schedule and they as a team are very up and down, and we'll just have to see if they can get it together. The next game we're going to touch on is the Seattle Seahawks defeating the Carolina Panthers. They were at home and they won the game 37-27. Geno Smith was very solid as far as doing what he needed to on both sides of the football. He was 27 of 44, 227 yards and a touchdown. They got huge contribution running the football from Kenneth Walker as he had 18 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns to go along with having 3 catches for 59 yards. For Seattle, also, DK Metcalf had 6 catches for 112 yards but didn't find the end zone. And the real star of the show as far as catching the football for Carolina was actually Adam Thielen. He had 11 catches for 145 yards and a touchdown. Andy Dalton started in place of Bryce Young, who was out with the ankle injury, and he was 34 of 58 for 368 yards. I'm sorry, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw the ball 58 times. That's pretty wild. But ultimately, Seattle was able to get the win. Carolina did keep pace with them, but ultimately they did fall to 0-3. Seattle's next game is October 2nd, 8:15 p.m. Eastern for Sunday Night Football. That's going to be, I'm sorry, Monday Night Football at the New York Giants. They have a bye week, week 5. Then they're at the Cincinnati Bengals, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 15th. They're home the next couple of games after that. The Arizona Cardinals, October 22nd, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on Fox. October 29th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on Fox as well. They're home against the Cleveland Browns. The Seattle Seahawks, to me, I said that they would be one of the top teams in that division, and so far they're kind of keeping pace with San Francisco at 3-0. But looking at this team here, I could see them beating the Giants and the Cardinals. Those are the only teams that jump out as teams that I see them beating. And with Baltimore, we'll have to see if they get healthy again. I touched on that earlier in the program. Cincinnati is definitely going to keep pace with them being at home, and Cleveland's defense looks great so far. So as far as Seattle, we'll have to see what they're going to do here. Carolina falling to 0-3 in their division doesn't surprise me, but the way that they fought against Seattle definitely does surprise me. Home against Minnesota and at Detroit and at Miami, those all sound like L's unless they can get something going against Minnesota at home. Then they're home against the Houston Texans and home against the Colts. We'll touch on those games as we get closer to them, but it's not looking good for them. It's really not. The Carolina Panthers are probably going to be playing for lottery, and that's just kind of what the plan probably was coming into the season. Another game we don't have to really touch much on, the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Bears 41-10. Patrick Mahomes was 24 of 33 for 272 and 3 touchdowns. Blaine Gabbert came in relief in the fourth quarter, but didn't do much. He was 3 of 5 for 31 yards with 2 interceptions. Justin Fields was 11 of 22 for 99 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also carried the ball 11 times for 47 yards, no touchdowns. The Bears are a mess. Kansas City, they're riding the ship. They're getting right back where they needed to be. Travis Kelce paced all receivers. He had 7 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. And rookie Rashee Rice added 5 catches for 59 yards. Kansas City also had 153 yards on the ground, with Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting 15 carries each and a touchdown. Pacheco had 62 yards. Edwards-Helaire had 55 yards. So that's a nice 1-2 punch. Jerick McKinnon, he wasn't really as involved in this game, but he caught 2 touchdowns on 3 catches for 19 yards. So he can catch the ball if he's not running the football well. Looking at the Chiefs over the course of their next few games here, they're at the New York Jets for Sunday Night Football. They're at the Minnesota Vikings October 8th the following week, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. Then they're home for Thursday Night Football against the Denver Broncos. Those are all going to be wins to me. They're home against the Chargers 10 days later, October 22nd. Then they're at Denver October 29th. The only thing that I can see stopping the Chiefs at this current time is injury, because those all sound like wins to me. Those just all sound like wins. And I just feel like the loss to the Lions at the beginning of the season was just more to do with Kelce being out, because they only lost by 1. Looking at the Bears' schedule, they're at home on Sunday against the Denver Broncos, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 1st. As I stated, I'm going to give the Broncos one more chance, but if the Bears squeak by and Justin Fields looks like Michael Vick, don't be too shocked. The Bears are then at Washington for Thursday Night Football, October 5th. I took the Washington to win that game. 10 days later, they're home against the Minnesota Vikings. I took Minnesota to win that as well. They're also home against the Las Vegas Raiders, October 22nd. Then they're at the Los Angeles Chargers, 8:20 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Again, those all sound like losses to me for the Bears. I just need to see more and see something that indicates that they're going to be even remotely competitive, because it just doesn't show. Another game that I'm going to talk about here that definitely surprised me here, the Arizona Cardinals defeated the Dallas Cowboys 28-16. That was just one of those games I just had to check that score, make sure it was right. One of the things that jumped out at me here, Joshua Dobbs was 17 of 21 for 189 yards and a touchdown, but he just looked comfortable in the pocket. There was never a time where Dallas scared him like I thought they would. Dak Prescott was 25 of 40 for 249 yards and a touchdown, but he also threw a late interception to seal the game for the Arizona Cardinals. Tony Pollard did carry the ball 23 carries for 122 yards, but didn't find the end zone. On the flip side, James Conner for Arizona had 14 carries for 98 yards, and he did find the end zone. Again, Dak Prescott passed for 249 yards, and he was able to hit 7 different receivers, but Rico Dowdle got the only touchdown that he threw, and that was later in the game here. Did not work here. On the flip side, again, Dobbs only threw 1 touchdown as well, but it was just he was more timely with the football. And with Connor and Moore each scoring a touchdown on the ground, that definitely gave them what they need. The Cardinals got their first win of the season to improve to 1-2 as Dallas falls to 2-1. The Cardinals are at San Francisco October 1st, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then they're home for the Cincinnati Bengals, 4:05 p.m. Eastern October 8th on Fox. They're at the Rams, then at the Seahawks on the 15th and 22nd, 4:25 p.m. Eastern and 4:05 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then they are home against the Baltimore Ravens October 29th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern on CBS. And again, the Arizona Cardinals, to me, they winning Dallas, that definitely kind of showed that they got some fight in them. We saw fight all season with this team, but this definitely solidified it for me. So they're definitely going to be a team to watch. The Dallas Cowboys losing this game is definitely disappointing, but I think they can right the ship. They're home against the New England Patriots on Sunday, October 1st, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. And we'll have to see if Dak can play better because, as I already stated, when this defense doesn't play that great, can Dak pick them up? And he didn't do that. They're at the San Francisco 49ers October 8th, 8:20 p.m. Eastern for Sunday Night Football. I'm taking the 49ers on that one. October 16th for Monday Night Football, they're at the Los Angeles Chargers, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. Then they have their bye week before they're home against the Los Angeles Rams, October 29th, 1 p.m. Eastern. The Dallas Cowboys, looking at those games, the only game that jumps out are the Niners and the Eagles. Those are teams are better than them at this point right now. They're both 3-0, so I have to say that they're better. I'm going to say that the Cowboys go 3-2, but if they can get one against the 49ers or the Eagles, that'll put them back in my good graces. But the Cardinals, with what they did, that's just nuts to me. I still think that they're going to be a lottery team, but they definitely showed me something. Let's go into the Sunday night football game here. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Las Vegas Raiders 23-18. This game was definitely just more of a slugfest than until late when the Raiders scored 11 points here to kind of bring it close. But it was just mostly Pittsburgh kind of giving Jimmy Garoppolo the business. He threw 28 of 44 for 324 with 2 touchdowns, and he had 3 interceptions. So Pittsburgh's defense definitely harassed him. Kenny Pickett had a lot smoother day. He did only pass for above 50% completion, but he was 16 of 28 for 235 with 2 touchdowns. And he just paced the game a lot better. They got 105 yards on the ground with Najee Harris leading the way at 19 carries for 65 yards. Meanwhile, only Josh Jacobs only had 17 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown. Looking at the receiving for the Raiders, the majority of that went to Devontae Adams, who paced all receivers. He had 13 catches for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns, with Jacoby Myers adding 7 catches for 85 yards. So they definitely had a great day on the receiving end. They just couldn't get it done late when they needed to. For Pittsburgh, George Pickens, 4 catches, 75 yards. Calvin Austin, the rookie receiver, had 2 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. And their tight end, Pat Freiermuth, also had 3 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown as well. So Kenny Pickett, he didn't have as pretty of a stat sheet as the receiving core on his end, but he definitely was able to get things done when he needed to, and they were able to hold off the Raiders late. So Pittsburgh improves to 2-1 as the Raiders drop to 1-2 following their victory over the Broncos. They've now lost 2 straight. The Pittsburgh Steelers are at Houston on Sunday for 1 p.m. Eastern, October 1st, and I said that they would win that. They're home against the Baltimore Ravens, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 8th on CBS, and I'm going to take them to win that as well because Baltimore is not a healthy football team. They have their bye week, week 6, and then they're back at it week 7 at the Los Angeles Rams, October 22nd, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The Jacksonville Jaguars are their next opponent that they're going to be home for, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 29th on CBS. Then they have a quick turnaround for Thursday Night Football home against the Tennessee Titans. Pittsburgh looked pretty good. I just feel like once they got smacked a bit by San Francisco early week 1, but Pittsburgh has looked pretty good. They've definitely pulled it out when they need to. They've only outscored their opponents 49-40 in 2 games, but winning is what counts, and that's ultimately what they've done. So, with them beating Houston, Baltimore, and the Rams, that would put them at 3-2. Jacksonville, again, I said that defense was going to harass Trevor Lawrence, so I'm still going to take them to win that game. And then with the quick turnaround on a Thursday night game, that can go either way. Those things are strange. So the Steelers could be a 4-1 football team over that time here. And as far as the Raiders go, again, their only victories over the Broncos. That's not saying much as far as what you are because the Broncos aren't a measuring stick for success by any means. They're home against the Chargers October 1st, 4:05 p.m. Eastern in a divisional matchup. Then they're home against Green Bay for Monday Night Football. I took them to lose both of those games, and I'm going to stick by that. The following Sunday, they're home against the New England Patriots, 4:05 p.m. Eastern. They're at Chicago. I'll take the Raiders to win that one, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 22nd. Then they're home for Monday Night Football, October 15th. Actually, they're at the Detroit Lions for Monday Night Football. So the Raiders could go 2-3 over the next 5 games, but that's not really saying much. I don't see the Raiders or Broncos being a factor. A couple more games here to talk about for Monday Night Football before we wrap things up here with the broadcast. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that result the first game of 2, 25-11. That game was never close, and it looks to me like Baker Mayfield was lost kind of where to throw the ball because the Eagles pressured him so well up the front. Their defensive line really, really gave him problems. On the flip side, DeAndre Swift showed out to help Jalen Hurts out. So that offense was very consistent and they held the ball. Jalen Hurts was 23 of 37 for 277 yards with 1 touchdown. He did throw 2 interceptions, but the Buccaneers didn't do anything with those interceptions as far as points. They were only able to gain 6 points. As I stated, DeAndre Swift was the man with 16 carries for 130 yards. Jalen Hurts had the rushing touchdown for them, so he threw a touchdown and ran for a touchdown. But DeAndre Swift was a beast on the ground, and he contributed for much of the 201 yards that they got on the ground. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield was 15 of 25 for 146 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, and they were able to get 41 yards on the ground from Rachaad White. As far as the receiving goes here, A.J. Brown paced all receivers with 9 catches for 131 yards, but he wasn't able to find the end zone. That went to Olamide Zaccheaus, who had 2 catches for 58 yards and a touchdown. For Tampa, Mike Evans had a pretty solid game with 5 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, but Chris Godwin was only able to snag 3 catches for 32 yards, so that kind of left them hanging a bit. With only 146 receiving yards as a team, Baker Mayfield, he had a very rough day, and as I said, they were harassing him all night on defense here. The Eagles are now 3-0 on pace with the 49ers as the only other 3-0 team in the NFC. And they're home against the Washington Eagles October 1st, 1 p.m. Eastern, and I definitely have them winning that football game. At the Los Angeles Rams October 8th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then they're at the New York Jets 4:25 p.m. Eastern October 15th, and I can see them winning all of those games. Things get interesting when they face the Miami Dolphins, and that's going to be a game that I'm going to touch on later in the season as we get closer to it. That's on October 22nd for Sunday Night Football. Then they're at Washington October 29th. I did mention that I could see Washington taking that game just because it's a divisional matchup and they could split it. So at worst, like over the next 5 games, I could see them being 4-1, 3-2, 4-1, 3-2. So Philadelphia is definitely going to be in the mix. Tampa, with them losing, they luckily had company as Atlanta lost and New Orleans all lost too. So they're still tied for first at 2-1 in their division. So they're not out of it by any means. And they're at the Saints on Sunday, October 1st to kind of see who's going to do what. They have a bye week, week 5. Then they're home for their next couple of games against the Detroit Lions, 1 p.m. Eastern, October 15th, and the Atlanta Falcons, October 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern as well. They have a quick turnaround for at Buffalo, Thursday Night Football, October 26th at 8:15 Eastern, and I took Buffalo to win that. And then they're at Houston 10 days later, on November 5th, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS, and I took them to win that as well. So they could be a 3-2 football team over the next 5 games, and again, they're not out of it by any means. It's just a matter of not losing it in the division, which is what they got coming up on Sunday against the Saints. That's going to be very important. The final game we're going to talk about here before we wrap things up here and kind of pace what we're going to talk about on Thursday, That was the Cincinnati Bengals at home defeating the Los Angeles Rams in a Super Bowl 56 matchup, with the final score being 19-16. This is one of those games here that just wasn't really anything to write home about, but the Bengals got the much needed win, and they got Joe Burrow out there playing, and he didn't show any kind of inhibition at all with the calf muscles. So that was definitely great. The Bengals improved to 1-2 as the Rams fall to 1-2, losing two straight after winning that opener against Seattle. Joe Burrow was 26 of 49. He didn't throw any touchdowns, but he did throw an interception, unfortunately. Matthew Stafford for the Los Angeles Rams was 18 of 33 for 269 yards, one touchdown, two interceptions. Neither team ran the ball really well. Joe Mixon did have 19 carries and 65 yards for a touchdown for Cincinnati. But as a team, the Los Angeles Rams only ran the ball for 71 yards, with Kyron Williams having 10 carries for 38. On the receiving end, Jamar Chase had a heck of a game, pacing all receivers with 12 catches for 141 yards, but he didn't find the end zone. Tyler Boyd also brought up the rear with 5 catches for 39 yards. On the receiving end for Los Angeles, Puka Nacua continues his magical season with 5 catches for 72 yards. Tyler Higbee had 5 catches for 71 yards, and Tutu Atwell with 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. He also ran the ball once for 22 yards as well. So Puka Nacua through 3 games has 30 receptions for this team. This was a team that was worried about their receiving core with Cooper Kupp being out. So this is definitely showing the Rams got potential, even though they fell to 1-2. The Bengals, with them improving to 1-2, looking at their schedule, with them at being 1-2, they're still in last place in their division behind Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland. And they have a chance to get some of those games back here coming up here. Now, they are at Tennessee here, 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox. I got them winning that game, and they're at Arizona, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, October 8th, also on Fox. So these games coming up here are important, but I think they can shake out of it. They're home against the Seattle Seahawks October 15th. Then they have a bye week. If they can get to the bye week winning 2 of their next 3 games, they'll still be on pace, but they can't lose any more ground to Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Cleveland. That's going to be the key for them. They're at San Francisco, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, October 29th. Then they're home against Buffalo for Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. Eastern, November 5th. So once they come out of that bye week, things get really tough. So 3-2 sounds okay, but they need to do better than that. Plain and simple. They're going to need to do better than that to keep pace as far as where they want to be in the division and across football. And then looking at the Los Angeles Rams here, again, they're 1-2 in the division, with San Francisco leading the way at 3-0, Seattle at 2-1. They're tied with Arizona. And looking at their schedule, they're at the Indianapolis Colts, 1 p.m. Eastern, and I did say that they would take that game, but that's kind of a pick 'em based on the way Indianapolis has played. They're looking like the slightly better team. So the Colts could sneak that one out. We'll predict that one on Sunday. They're home against the Eagles and Cardinals, respectively, on Fox, October 8th and October 15th. The Rams are. With the Eagles having to travel and with the Cardinals knowing them very well, I'm not sure if those will be factors or not, but I could see the Rams losing those games. I could see them losing to Philadelphia and possibly losing to Arizona, because Arizona definitely showed what they can do with against the Cowboys. So I could see the Rams winning a couple of games here really quick. They're home against the Pittsburgh Steelers October 22nd. Then they're at the Dallas Cowboys 1 p.m. Eastern October 29th. So if you're the Los Angeles Rams, one thing to think about is if you can go 3-2, that'll still keep you in the mix, because, like I said, they're not out of it by any means. They're a couple of games behind San Francisco, but they're still in the play for like a wild card spot. Because San Francisco, they're a juggernaut, and I just don't really see what can stop them at this current point in time here. So that definitely goes over everything as far as the week 3 action here. And we'll definitely be talking about week 4. Week 4, we'll be discussing that Thursday night football game on Thursday coming up here. And I'll predict a winner for you and see who I have. That game is going to be played between the Lions and the Packers at Green Bay. And also on Thursday on that broadcast, I'm going to kind of give you a preview of how I feel about Sunday's games, and just kind of see what we do as far as those. But I won't have a prediction for you until Sunday. So I'm actually going to predict the Falcons-Jaguars game on Thursday, because that game will already be being played by the time I come on. So check for that game here. But thank you so much for That's going to wrap up the episode here. We went through a lot of action here as far as week 3, and we definitely look forward to week 4 here. A lot of football was talked about, but I do appreciate you joining me here so much here. The next broadcast, again, is going to be on Thursday. That's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little bit late here today, and I do apologize for that, but I thank you for hanging out with me. Sub up to the channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And again, I'll be back with you guys on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining the Hype Show. You have a good rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Peace.